Shabbat shalom, everyone. Over the years, for this particular weekend, I have spoken in a lot of different ways about the concept of gratitude. Given the fact that it is Thanksgiving weekend, it always seems appropriate to think about gratitude in our lives. And it's easy to think about gratitude when things are going well, when things are easy, when everything goes the way that we plan it to go. It's very easy to be grateful. But I think this year, it's all the more important that we have this conversation this morning about the concept of gratitude. Because what we're going to learn is that gratitude is not only something that we can and should have when times are difficult, but gratitude is actually essential for us in being able to cope with difficult and challenging times. It is, to some degree, we're looking so much now for the vaccine for all of our problems. To some degree, gratitude is the vaccine that we as human beings can use in dealing with difficult and challenging times. So I wanted to think a little bit today about this concept of gratitude and tie it into a section within our Torah portion. The reality actually is, when I did a little bit of research and history on Thanksgiving, if we think about it, the holiday of Thanksgiving actually grew out of very difficult times. The first Thanksgiving took place after nearly half of the pilgrims had died. And it was a rough winter, and it was an uncertain future that they sat down and had that first Thanksgiving. It actually became a national holiday in 1863 in the middle of the Civil War. So the country was at war with itself, and Thanksgiving became a national holiday. And it was moved to its current date in the middle of the Depression in the 1930s, right after the Depression in the 1930s. So Thanksgiving itself as a holiday is not about, oh, how amazing our life is and let's eat and let's, fill ourselves with everything we can. It actually stems and it comes from some very difficult times. And in spite of that, in spite of those difficult times, our ancestors thought it important to express gratitude. I was reading an article by Dr. Robert Emmons, who is at UC Davis, I believe. Yeah, he's a researcher at UC Davis. And he writes as follows: consciously cultivating an attitude of gratitude, everybody seems to want to make that rhyme, an attitude of gratitude builds up a sort of psychological immune system that can cushion us when we fall. There is scientific evidence that grateful people are more resilient to stress, whether minor everyday hassles or major personal upheavals. Being grateful, being thankful, is something that is not only good for our well-being, for our mental well-being, but it's actually good for our physical selves as well. It helps us cope. It helps us cope with the stress of times around us. So how do we do that? How do we do that? Sometimes we have to find the kernel of the good in the midst of the tragedy. And Dr. Emmons talks about it as reframing disaster. And he's done a lot of research with his students on when people remember challenging moments in their lives. He's talked about whether they only remember the negative or whether they're able to find something positive, even if it's just a moment, within that negative time. And when they can do that, it allows them to bring gratitude forward and to have it be that inoculant, to have it be that vaccine against the challenge that they are facing. And he writes that it's not a form of superficial happyology. I don't know that happyology is really a word, but he seems to use it. So it's not a form of superficial happyology. Instead, it means realizing the power that we have to transform an obstacle into an opportunity. It means reframing a loss into a potential gain or recasting negativity into a positive channel for gratitude. So, how does this connect then to today and to our Torah portion? I want us to think about our ancestor Jacob in the moment that he was going through at the beginning of our Torah portion. And if you want to follow along, it's at the beginning of page 166 and 167 in our red Eitz Chaim Chumashim. Jacob was in a very bad place in his life. He was on the run. He had just stolen the blessing and the birthright from his brother Esau. We talked a little bit about that last week. He was on the outs with his brother and felt that his brother actually was so angry that his brother was going to kill him. And so he was on the run, he was alone, he was isolated, he was cut off. He went to sleep and he had this dream, the famous Jacob's dream. And he woke up from the dream, and what did he say? You can look on page 167, verse 16. Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, "Surely the Lord is present in this place, and I did not know it." Shaken, he said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the abode of God, and that is the gateway to the heavens." What's going on here? What is Jacob saying? Jacob was in a stressful, difficult, horrible moment in his life, and yet he was able to wake up and recognize beauty and majesty and God's presence all in the place that he was at. In essence, when I read this, I hear Jacob recognizing the fact that he actually is not alone, although he thinks he's alone, and showing the gratitude for that moment. When he says, "How awesome is this place?" That is an expression, a pure expression of gratitude for God's presence and for being in that moment, in spite and in the midst of all of the challenges that we have. And I think that for us as human beings and for us as Jews are, we spend much of our lives in the mitzvot saying we can make a difference in this world, right? We accept the fact that the world is broken, and I've spoken about that before. We accept the fact that the world has challenges and problems. And we, as Jews, say, we're going to do something about that. We're going to do something about that. There are other people, there are other philosophies that say, you know what? We don't need to do anything about it. We can't change it. We should just try to be as happy as we can be in our little bubble, in our little shell, in our little world. But we as Jews take a different perspective. We say we can change it. We can do something about that. And what is true for the outside physical world is equally true for our internal world. That when we are feeling those times of stress, when we are feeling those times of trouble, when we are feeling overwhelmed, we have the choice. We can do something about that. We can recognize that. And our tradition, and I think science also, is saying that finding moments of gratitude in our lives is the way that we can do something about it. And so today we celebrate. Today we celebrate, and we've had many conversations, Eliana, with you and I and with your family. We've all established this isn't what we thought it would be, but we are here today, and we are celebrating today, and we are with you today, and we are grateful the fact that we can come together and we can be here and we can do that. And that's a start. To recognize this moment to recognize the fact that we can do something about it and change the way we're thinking about it is powerful. Is powerful. There are a number of different suggestions that people have given for how to cultivate and how to bring this feeling of gratitude forward. And what happens when we do? Another researcher from the University of Washington named Ryan Fair talks about 5 steps to gratitude in tough times. 1, put your gratitude on paper. There's something actually really powerful when we write it down, when we can see it, right? That's why actually, for as much as our Torah has been oral tradition for a long time, eventually it was written down. It has to be there. It has to be written down. It has to be documented so we can go back to it and we can see it and we can convince ourselves it wasn't just a passing thought. No, it's real. It's here. It's in front of us. So when you have those times, those moments where you feel thankful, write it down. Document it somewhere. 2, have a gratitude conversation. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with people that are around you. Because gratitude is contagious. Gratitude is contagious. When we start feeling thankful, it lets other people recognize how they can be thankful as well. Take it even a step further, he says. Step 3, tell someone that you appreciate them. It's not enough just to have gratitude for the inanimate gifts in our lives. The most precious gifts that we have are the people that are around us. Tell them that you are grateful for their presence in your life. Have that conversation. Step 4, he says, pay it forward. Pay it forward. When we feel those moments, of joy, help other people to do that. And finally, he says, reflect and repeat, although it sounds a little bit like shampoo instructions. Reflect and repeat, right? Take a few moments, remember that, and then bring that moment up again. Try to shape your life so that you can experience that again. You can have that moment, express that gratitude over and over and over again. When we do that, when we find ways to bring gratitude into our lives and to be able to feel it and express it, it really can be a powerful, powerful vaccine against the most difficult challenges that we have in our lives. And so today, we hope and pray not only for a vaccine for COVID, but we remind ourselves that it's in our power to help inoculate ourselves against some of the most challenging moments by being grateful, by being thankful, and by expressing that. Shabbat Shalom.